Hi, Don. Did you get the copy of the article on recycling footwear that I emailed you?
Yeah, it's here. I've had a look at it.
So, do you think it's a good topic for our presentation?
Well, before I started reading it, I thought recycling footwear. Well, although it's quite interesting, perhaps there isn't enough to say about it. 'Cause we put shoes in recycling bins. They go to charity shops, and that's about it.
But there's much more to it than that.
I realise that now, and I'm keen to research the topic more.
That's great.
One of the things I didn't realise until I read the article was just how many pairs of trainers get recycled.
Well, a lot of young people wear them all the time now. They've become more popular than ordinary shoes.
I know. I guess they are very hard wearing. But don't they look a bit casual for school uniform? I don't think they're right for that.
Actually, I think some of them look quite smart on pupils. Better than a scruffy old pair of shoes. So, do you keep shoes a long time?
Yes, though I do tend to wear my old pairs for doing dirty jobs like cleaning my bike.
I must admit, I've recycled some perfectly good shoes that haven't gone out of fashion and still fit, just because they don't look great on me anymore. That's awful, isn't it?
I think it's common because there's so much choice. The article did say that recent sales of footwear have increased enormously.
That didn't surprise me.
No, but then it said that the amount of recycled footwear has fallen. It's 6% now, compared to a previous level of 11%. That doesn't seem to make sense.
That's because not everything goes through the recycling process. Some footwear just isn't good enough to resell for one reason or another and gets rejected. What did you think about the project his team set up to avoid this by making new shoes out of the good parts of old shoes?
It sounded like a good idea. They get so many shoes, they should be able to match parts. I wasn't surprised that it failed, though. I mean, who wants to buy second-hand shoes, really? Think of all the germs you could catch.
Well, people didn't refuse them for that reason, did they? It was because the pairs of shoes weren't identical.
They still managed to ship them overseas, though.
That's another area we need to discuss.
You know, I used to consider this topic just from my own perspective, by thinking about my own recycling behaviour without looking at the bigger picture. So much happens once shoes leave the recycling area.
It's not as simple as you first think. And we can show that by taking a very different approach to it.
Absolutely. So let's discuss how we're going to split up the present.
So, Jane, you'll be off to Denmark soon to do your work placement.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it. And I've just started packing up all my books to put in storage.
Well, I hope they don't get spoilt.
It's okay. My grandfather works in a bookshop, and he told me how to pack them.
Oh, that's helpful.
He says you have to support the spine, otherwise the paper can come away from the cover.
Yeah, that's obvious.
He also told me to pack them flat in the box, not on their side. Again, because they can bend, and if you leave them like that for, say, a year, it's quite hard to get them back to their normal shape.
Well, it's pretty clear that ruins them. But a lot of people just can't be bothered to protect their books.
He always says it's such a shame that publishers don't use better quality paper.
It's the acid in the paper that causes the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why old books go yellow. You know, some of the books my grandfather's given me are like that already.
Oh.
I should dump them really if they're going to deteriorate further, but I'd feel bad. They'll always remind me of him. He's quite a collector, you know.
Well, if they're important to you.
Yeah, I'd regret just throwing them away.
You know, maybe it's because I was taught to treasure books, but I hate seeing students force open the pages of paperbacks. They press so hard they end up breaking the spine.
I know. But unfortunately, paperbacks aren't designed to last a long time, and people know that. Hardbacks aren't quite as weak.
Yeah, they're different, I suppose. But I still don't think people value hardbacks like they used to.
Well, they aren't decorative, are they, like other objects? Plus, nowadays, people don't keep them out on shelves as much as they used to.
That's such a pity. When I visit someone, if they have, say, a colourful book on a table, it's the first thing I'm drawn to.
I agree. And book covers can be a work of art in themselves. Some are really eye-catching.
I've always been taught to handle books carefully. If you watch someone take a book off a shelf, well, they usually do it wrong.
Ah, my grandfather says you should put your hand right over the top of the book. Or, if you can't do that, pull the other books on the shelf aside so that you can hold the whole cover.
When did you learn all this?
He watched me pull a heavy book off the shelf when I was small, and it fell on the floor and broke apart.
Oh dear.
Oh, I can still remember it.
You know what I really like?
What?
The smell of new books.
Me too.
My parents used to laugh at me when I was a kid because I loved putting books up to my nose, almost as much as reading them.
New books aren't cheap though, are they?
I guess we're lucky we can buy them.
My grandfather stocks second-hand books as well as new ones, and they don't smell quite as good.
Hi, Jake. How are you getting on with the practical teaching?
It's harder than I expected, but I've got some great classes. How about you?
Not brilliant. I'm really struggling with my Year 12 science class.
Are they hard to control?
Well, I don't have discipline problems as such. It's just that they don't seem to think that science has anything to do with their lives. It's depressing. They listen to what I say, and I gave them a test last week, and the results weren't too bad. But there's no real engagement.
Right.
And as part of my teaching practice, I have to design an experiment for them to do. I was wondering about something on the children's diets. You know, asking them to record what they eat and maybe linking it to their state of health.
Let's think. So your methodology would involve the children recording what they eat, okay, but you'd also need to have access to the children's medical records, and I don't think people would be happy about that. Confidentiality would be an issue. If you could get the right data, the conclusions might be significant, but I suspect it's not going to be easy.
Right.
Have you thought about doing an experiment using animals?
Wouldn't that be upsetting for the children?
Well, the animals don't have to be harmed in any way. It could just be an experiment where they're given a certain diet and the effects are observed.
Would I have to get permission to use animals?
Yes, you'd have to submit an outline of the experiment and fill in a form, but it's quite straightforward.
But if we found out that, say, a particular diet affects the health of animals, the same thing wouldn't necessarily be true for people, would it?
No, that's true. But the findings for any experiment are going to be limited. It's inevitable.
I suppose so. So, what animals could I use to investigate the effects of diet? Mice?
Yes, you'd need experimental mice, ones that have been specially bred for experiments. OK, so what will your experiment be investigating exactly?
Well, something to do with nutrition. So maybe we could look at food supplements, things like extra iron and extra protein, and their impact on health.
That might be rather broad. Maybe just look at the effects of one supplement, like sugar, on the health of the mice.
In fact, maybe the focus could be on whether mice can control their own diet.
So what happens when they have access to more sugar that they don't really need?
Exactly. Do they eat it, or do they decide to leave it?
Great. Then later on, you could do a follow-up experiment adding another variable. Like, you could give some of the mice the chance to be more active, running on a wheel or something, and the others just sit around and don't do much.
Or I could repeat the experiment but change the type of food I provided, or use mice with a different genetic structure. But I think your idea would be more interesting. I might think about that some more.